Namaste everyone. Welcome to this presentation of INDIC Studies Toronto. Our topic today is Reclaiming Dharma, Reading Manusmriti Beyond Colonial Gaze. This talk is based on insights from the speaker's recent book, Chatuh Shloki Manusmriti. Our speaker today is Shri Nithin Sridhar ji, who is a published author of 6 books and based in Mysuru, Bharat. He works as the Director of INDICA Centre for Moksha Studies, dedicated to create, curate, and promote content on Hindu philosophy with a special focus on Vedanta. Namaste, Nithin ji. Please continue.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Is my audio clear?
Yes, your audio is clear, Nithin ji.
Okay. I'm just sharing my presentation. Is it visible?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. Again, thank you. I'm very happy to be here. So as you can see on the title slide, by my latest book is Chatuh Shloki Manusmriti, an English commentary. It is a commentary on the first 4 verses. Chatuh Shloki means first 4 verses. So the Manusmriti is a very huge text having more than 2,600 plus verses. So I have taken only the first 4 verses, which are very, very important and which provide a gateway to understand the whole Dharma Shastra. So in this talk, the title is Reclaiming Dharma, Reading Manusmriti Beyond Colonial Gaze. The time is short, so I will not be actually reading from Manusmriti in any detail, but rather I will be focusing on why it is important to go beyond colonial gaze. I will take up an example from the Manusmriti, a single verse from Manusmriti, and give a illustration about to substantiate why this discussion is needed, why it is important to go beyond colonial gaze, why it is important to revive the Dharma Shastra tradition. And I hope you would find the session very useful. Let me begin my talk with a prayer. Vakratunda Mahakaya Koti Surya Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Jayanti Mangala Kali Bhadrakali Kapalini Durga Kshama Shiva Dhatri Swaha Swadha Namostute Ishvaro Guru Ratmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Bharati Karunapatram Bharati Padabhushanam Bharati Padamarudam Bharati Tirthamashraye Vidya Vinaya Sampannam Vitaragam Vivekinam Vande Vedanta Tatvagyam Vishekara Bharatim Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Okay, I'm not able to change the slide. Okay, yeah. So when it comes to Hindu textual tradition, we have a we are not a single book tradition, but we have a library of books. We have a forest of textual tradition, and of course the most famous is the Veda, and Veda itself has the Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, Upanishads. So, and we have more than 108 Upanishads. And from there, next comes the Smriti Shastras, next comes the Vedangas, and then we have the Smriti Shastras, under which this Manusmriti, Yagyavalkya Smriti, Parashara Smriti, and other Smritis comes. And we have the Itihasa, Purana, and other Darshana Shastras. So it is a very huge Vidyasthana, and which have been condensed into in the Mahabharata, they condense into a 14 plus 4, 18 Vidyasthanas. So among these Vidyasthanas, the Dharma Shastra is also one of the very important Vidyasthana. Dharma Shastra means Shastra means any textual body, any textual work which systematically presents a body of knowledge. So Dharma Shastra refers to all those texts which systematically presents the uh, teachings about Dharma, knowledge about Dharma. So the term primarily refers to Smriti Shastras such as Manusmriti, Yagyavalkya Smriti, Parashara Smriti, and others 1820 Smritis. But in a more larger sense, it refers to all sources of knowledge as far as Dharma is considered, starting with the Veda itself and then including Itihasa, Puranas, etc. So, but among all of them, of course, even the Dharma Sutras, Grihastha Sutras, all are included. The Smriti Shastras have a prominent position, and among the Smriti Shastras, the Manusmriti occupies a very, very exalted position in the Bharatiya Jnana Parampara, in the Indian textual tradition, as one of the most authentic, most authoritative source of Dharma. While this is the view of the tradition, for you have as many as 9 Samskrita commentaries on Manusmriti. The oldest available commentary goes back to at least 800 C or 700 or 800 C, and we know that the way our Indian knowledge tradition works, there will be even older commentaries, right? So as far as the Indian tradition, textual tradition is concerned, Manusmriti occupies a very important position. However, in the last 200, 300 years, due to colonial influence, there has been a lot of distortion, there has been a lot of reductionism, and as a result, today, the contemporary engagement with the text is filled with a lot of prejudice, they're problematic, and it is of deep discomfort. If you take the name Manusmriti, if you take the name Smriti, there is those who know about it are seriously discomforted, but majority of the population don't know about it, or those who know, they know it from political developments such as burning of Manusmriti, without 90% of the population having never studied Manusmriti in a proper manner. Studying proper manner is as important as because there are a lot of today translations are available everywhere, and cherry picking of quotations are also everywhere available, but that is not studying. So basically, at the root of this is the British Christian colonialism that caused a systematic destruction of indigenous education systems, our Gurukula systems, and more importantly, they they carried out a indoctrination of the Hindu masses, of the Indian psyche, with Western ways of thinking, and this has continued post independence also. We have continued to our reliance and upon the colonial gaze. We have even built upon that colonial gaze using many more new frameworks, many more new ideas that has come to us from the West, that has come to us from the modernity, and that modernity's gaze has become our default drishti, towards our default worldview to how we approach all socio-cultural civilization issues. And this has ensured that, we have become deracinated and alienated from our own textual tradition. And this is true across Indian knowledge system, but more true, especially with the Dharma Shastra tradition, because of a lot of controversies, deliberated propaganda, a lot of prejudice, and most importantly, a kind of disconnect between our contemporary living, about contemporary ethos rooted in modernity, and the ideals expressed in our Dharma Shastra. And it is not that Dharma Shastra express something or the Smritis express something which is not found in other texts. Starting from Gita to Vedas to Itihasa Puranas, everywhere the same idea is expressed. However, for some reason or the other, the Smritis, especially Manusmriti, have been bearing the brunt of being blamed for every ill in the society. Anyways, so story short, Manusmriti is very controversial today, but however, I believe that there cannot be a Indic drishti, a Hindu perspective of things, if we ignore Dharma Shastra, if we ignore the Dharma text which preach Dharma. We are Hindu Dharma is called as Dharma. It is called as Sanatana Dharma. So you cannot speak about Dharma, in a fanciful way. You cannot speak about Dharma without Dharma Shastra, because as I mentioned, Dharma Shastra by definition refers to those texts, those sources which systematically expound upon Dharma. Now, I just want to give a brief glimpse into the kind of negative publicity or a negative treatment or negative discourse around Manusmriti is, with a simple illustration about how the contemporary scholarship understands Manu's treatment of women. So we all know that Manusmriti has very, very well-known verses such as, Yasta Naristu Pujante Te Ramante Devata. In houses, in homes where the Nari, the Stree is honored, is worshipped, is kept happy, there the Devatas are also happy. Despite such verses present, the scholars often have a very negative view. They characterize Manusmriti as being anti-women. See, I have quoted some works from 2007, 2003, 2022 and all, who basically note that how Manusmriti makes women vulnerable and don't give them independence and rights, and how Manusmriti tries to control women's right to mobility, production, knowledge generation, reproduction, sexuality, sexual life, and makes women helpless, marginalized. And in this 2022 study, a few months back, I was invited for a symposium wherein I did a detailed rebuttal of this 2022 study by Nazira and Purvila, basically where they accuse Manusmriti as violating the sexual and reproductive rights, and in that context they mention Manusmriti as depicting women as being very sexually promiscuous and in need of regulation by women, men as protectors and guardians, and so on and so forth. So basically, you can trace this idea. Basically, one of the idea which is very, very prevalent, very, very deeply ingrained in the contemporary narrative as far as their discourse on Manusmriti's treatment of women is concerned, is the notion that Manusmriti curtails women's rights, it curtails women's independence, it makes controls women's actions. So I want to examine these ideas can be traced to a set of few verses from Manusmriti which are considered as problematic, and I will only take example of only one verse, considering the this short duration we have for the talk. But before I go there, I want to state it clearly, explicitly, that much of these criticisms are actually due to internalization of colonial and post-colonial Western gaze towards the Hindu text. So there is not an attempt to understand the Hindu text on their own basis, on the basis of what they want to actually convey. So this has resulted in incorrect, misguided, prejudiced reading of the Hindu text. So I hope I'm not speaking too fast. I'm being too mindful of the time, I think. So in the ninth chapter, comes, from seventh chapter onwards, the Manusmriti discusses Rajadharma. And in the context of Rajadharma, it also discusses various subjects such as Vyavahara, which is legal jurisprudence. And in that discussion, it also brings in husband-wife relationship in the context of marriage, children, and all those discussions. And especially while they give certain, general teachings in this context, they also, the discussion has about inheritance and children, different types of children, and all those discussions come in the chapter 9. So in the opening, in the beginning of the chapter 9, in the verse 3, there is a very, very important verse, but however, very, very, badly characterized verse, unfortunately. Uh, this verse is one of those which has a distinction of being branded as being anti-women, of curtailing the, at the heart of Manusmriti's teachings about preventing freedom of women. So what the verse basically says is, Pita rakshati kaumare, bharta rakshati yavane, rakshanti sthavire putra, na stri swatantram arhati. So I have highlighted in the red the portion, na stri swatantram arhati. Na means no, not, never. Stri, women. Swatantram is usually translated as independence or freedom. And arhati, fit or competent or eligible. So what the text says is Pita Rakshati Kaumari. Kaumari means when the child is young, she is a girl, she is a young child. The father protects her, guards her or protects her. Then after marriage, when she is adult, upon marriage, she is protected by the husband. And then when the husband dies and she becomes old, the son protects her. So the women should never be left independent or is not eligible for independence. Now, the key focus, as I mentioned, is the phrase Nastri Swatantram Marhati. Women is not to have independence, and this has been interpreted as the absolute evidence, incontrovertible evidence for the Manusmriti's attempts to curtail women's independence and rights by exerting control over every aspect of her life, and basically making her disempowered, vulnerable, marginalized, and every other. So this verse is usually, at the heart of all these contemporary discourses which speak about how Manusmriti oppresses women, prevents her control, and rest of the verses kind of, are used as corroborative evidence to further, reinforce this view. So there is a similar verse in the 5th chapter also, which also speaks about how same idea, but in a different context, that women are not, women should not take course to independence. So there is a slight change in the phrase there in the 5th chapter, wherein the subject is Sri Dharma, and where it says that women should be dependent upon the father, husband, and son, and should not take recourse to independence. So, but we will come to that later, perhaps. But first, let us focus on this verse of the 9th chapter, where it is said that the father, the husband, and the son protects her, and she should not be independent, or she is not eligible for independence, if you have to go for a very literal term. So my question is, the contemporary discourse says that this is the Manu's prescription to men to oppress and subjugate women. But the question we need to ask is this really the case? Does Bharatiya Shastra Parampara understand the role of women in such negative terms? Do the authors and commentators of Manusmriti and other similar Dharmashastra texts interpret this verse in this particular way, in this way which is very harmful and demeaning to women? If really the Manusmriti's intention was to suppress women in the context of family, why would then it state the verse has in a different chapter note that yatra naristu pujyante te ramante devata? In the families where the women, and it is not the single verse, in the same chapter, in the same context, it has a series of verses which basically say that In the families where the women, the daughter-in-laws, etc., if they are unhappy, then the whole family is destroyed. Then the whole family will be in sorrow. So where they are happy, even the devatas are happy. That is where the women of the family are happy. Only there, all the spiritual activities, all the ritualistic activities will bear fruit. So that is what this devatas are happy imply. So why would Manusmriti state such a thing if it really means that women should be oppressed? So the question, the answer to all this question is actually straightforward. No, neither the Manusmriti nor the commentators and interpreters of the traditional interpreters of the text take that to mean in such a negative and demeaning sense to women. So then what? How do they understand it then? So this is why it is very important to go to go beyond the colonial gaze, or to go beyond our own first impressions or surface superficial readings. Or when we read in the English language, there is the English language is the language of the Western culture, so certain ideas are ingrained in it. So they may appear similar, that but the connotation may not always be same. I can give you one example from a previous book. Few years ago, I wrote this very detailed study called "Menstruation Across Cultures: a Historical Perspective," wherein I did a comparative analysis of menstruation-related practices. That is, when the women go to periods. So, what are the practices? What are the views in different religions, including Hindu Dharma? There, I noted how the Sanskrit term for associated with menstruation is ashaucha, which is usually translated in English as impurity. But the English term impurity has a very negative connotation of a sense of a moral degradation or a sense of state of sinfulness, whose origin I have shown in the book, can be traced back to the Christian theology or Abrahamic theology. But in the Sanskrita literature, in our Hindu literature, Ashaucha, though has a meaning of uncleanliness, it does not have the meaning of moral depravity, does not have the meaning of sinfulness. It instead refers to the women in a state of heightened rajasic guna or rajo guna or rajasic energy, right? So there is two similar words, same word when translated to English, the English term comes up with its own baggage. You are all aware about how Sri Raju Malhotra ji speaks about Sanskrit and non-translatables. So while when we are doing discourse, it is not always possible to not use the translation, but we have to have sight of this fact. So in the context of the verse that we are discussing, the Swatantra term is definitely has a meaning of independence, no doubt. That is how it is generally understood. But the independence itself, it in this context, it has a different contextual meaning. So the independence itself could be of different way based on the context. So I mentioned earlier that the 9th chapter begins with Manu delineating, exposing, enunciating upon the duties of the men folk in the context of marriage and family. You see, the context of the chapter, the context of where this verse comes, is actually an enunciation of the duty of the men in the family. It is not primarily a statement whose purpose is to degrade women. Rather, it is a statement which is delineating the duties of the men, duties of the father, the husband, and the daughter, and the son. And what does it say? It is instructing Pita Rakshati Kaumare. It is instructing the men, the father, the husband, and the son to Raksha. Rakshana means protection. Protect women of the family. What does this protection means? Raksha has a wide range of meaning. Of course, the most obvious meaning of Raksha is protection in a physical sense, protect the family people from the outside inimical outsiders or outside inimical influences. So we all know that it is the duty of the parents to create a safe environment for the children to grow. Create a safe environment for the children where they are not harmed by the uh, criminals, harmed by the negative influences, harmed by the negative, and this influence could be a person, outside person, somebody on the street, or some unknown person, or somebody in the school, or it could be media, the ads, the TVs, the movies. It could be any kind of negative influences. It is a duty of the parents to protect the children. Similarly, if in the Hindu conception, of a family, the parents, the mother and the family, father and the mother are the head of the family. Even among them, the father has the responsibility to ensure the protection of the entire family. So the Hindu conception is not that everybody is same, everybody's duties are same. No, rather we have the notion of dharma, duty, which is dependent upon each contextual dharma, the based on gender, based on time, place, age, relationship, everything matters. So within the context of the family, the duty of the husband is to protection of the family. The duty of the wife is the nourishment of the family, right? So one is rakshana, the other is poshana. Raksha, poshana. So this is something which is very, very obvious to most of us who have been brought up in a good, healthy family environment. So now this, as I mentioned, this protection is not just physical protection. It includes physical protection against inimical outsiders, but it also means creating a safe and happy environment within a family, be it for the girls and the women, be it for the daughter, be it for the wife, be it for the mother, whoever it be, so that wherein they can live and flourish without any obstruction. A husband who causes domestic violence to the wife is also not doing his duty of a husband, the pati dharma of protecting the wife, because he is only hurting her, right? So this is how the Dharma Shastra thinkers, the rishis have enunciated. It is not in terms of rights, it is in terms of duties. So my duty ensures the rights of the others. You see how it is? So protection is also in the form of education, physical education, ethical education, spiritual education. So when you teach, when you constantly discuss with your wife or teach your daughter how to live, what is the ethical practices, what are the unethical practices, what are dharmic practices, what are adharmic practices, what actions are harmful to oneself and others, right? Say, for example, phone addiction is harmful, but usage of phone itself is almost it is necessary evil, you could say today, right? Similarly, there are many things, many practices, many etiquettes that has to be taught, that has to be practiced, be it in the young age or be it after marriage. So this is how the family works. So education is all about, includes all of them. That is also protection. Protection is also about creating an environment where women are not harassed or subjugated or troubled in any manner, already mentioned. Therefore, Manu places the responsibility upon men to create such a healthy and happy environment within family through their self-effort. So the point here is the verse is directed as an instruction to the men folk. And it is in this context the phrase Swatantra is used, where our commentators mention the Swatantra here refers to a state of unprotectedness. You see, it is a very different connotation. A state of unprotectedness, a state where the women is left vulnerable, distressed, suffering, a state where women is exposed to harm. That state is understood as Swatantra. And it is saying that women should never be left to fend for herself, to be in a vulnerable position, to be in a disempowered, distressed, suffering position. It should always be ensured that she is cherished, she is protected, and has a every situation, every safe and prosperous environment, a protective environment where she can flourish, she can pursue her dharmic desires, her ambitions, or whatever it is, her hobbies, her duties, everything in a safe manner, without obstruction. You see, the intention of the Dharma Shastra authors is completely opposite to what they are accused of. They are accused of making the women vulnerable. But what they are teaching is that men is an instruction to the men of the family that it is their duty to ensure that they are never left in a state of vulnerability. So it is the duty of the father to ensure that the daughter is never left in such a state wherein she is being taken advantage by others, she is being harmed by others. It is his duty to ensure and protect. Similarly for the husband, similarly for the son. And this is a very wide range. So the vulnerability could be many ways, distress could be many things, suffering could be due to many reasons. Now, it could be asked, in a contemporary context, many feminists will ask, oh, but why should we need men to protect us? But forget for a second this men, women, this thing about why should we need men to protect. But think about in context of family. Think about in terms of relationship. Is it wrong for a daughter to look up to their parents, especially the father, to protect her? Especially we know that father and daughters have a more deeper bonding, just like we have mothers and sons have a deeper bonding. Is it wrong for a daughter to look up to her father to protect her? Is it wrong for a wife to think that her companion, her sahadharmi, in the Hindu conception, the husband wife are sahadharma. The marriage is about practicing sahadharma and samabhoga. So you experience all the happiness and sorrows of the life, you pursue your desires and everything. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Everything you pursue as one unit together. So is it really wrong for one half to expect the other to look after them? Men also expect women to take care of them, right? So that is what even Dharma Shastra says. So though the way they take care of each other is little bit different, right? So that is at the heart of what is comes naturally to masculinity and feminine nature of a person. But think from this: is it really wrong for a old age mother to expect her son to take care of her? It is not. So we are a very family oriented system. We are a very family bound system, right? And it is all about caring and doing our duties, and that is at the heart of how we express love. So this unfortunately, this has been completely misinterpreted. Now let us do a little bit probing. Let us take swatantra as independence itself. But even here, we have to understand what kind of independence is. When contemporary scholars speak about independence, one way they think about it is the economic independence, or you want freedom to vote. That is how this feminist movement started. We want freedom to vote, freedom to do jobs, employment. So all that is in the field of artha purushartha. And then there is kama purushartha. Kama has a broader meaning of any desire, though it is specifically associated with sexual desire. But if you take a general meaning, then it means pursuing your hobbies, your desires, for what you really like to do. Is Manusmriti really speaking about taking away of independence to, or the right to pursue what we deeply desire? what we, the Artha Kama, in the Artha Kama field? The answer is no. What then is this independence? In the context of the verse, as I mentioned, is marriage and family and husband and wife relationship. So what could be the, if you read the chapter of not just the third verse, but next 5 to 10 verse, you will see the independence that is being denied is actually a denial of our human nature or human tendency to often perform reckless actions, because we are all afflicted by, Arishad Varga, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, right? We are all afflicted by lust, anger, and many other things. So we often, sometimes become so attached to our desires, we take actions which are harmful to our relationship. We become so engrossed in our desires and greed that we perform actions that can break the family, that can lead all the members of the family to suffering. They take it on a downward spiral and suffering. See, it is this kind of independence to perform this kind of actions that is being denied, or that is being prohibited, that is being depreciated. What it is basically saying is that it is also putting an additional aspect to it, that in the Hindu conception, that husband is also considered as a kind of a having a place which is equivalent to a teacher or a guru with respect to the wife. And that is how, the notion of the age difference between husband and wife, which now hardly anybody follows much. But in our parents' generations, 1 or 2 generations back, the husband was a few years older to the wife, and people married quite early. So you can see that in such a conception, that the husband as a guru is very, very obvious. So as a guru, then it is upon him to teach the wife what are the duties of the wife, or what are the actions which are nourishing, which are helpful to the family as a whole, helpful to the women, the wife also, right? So because the husband has gone to a gurukulam and studied many things. For the women, it is said the father himself is the teacher, the husband himself is the teacher. So there is a dual purpose. Yeah. So even otherwise, if in a family between husband and wife relationship, they share everything, including good advice. The Shastras are clear on this also, that if the husband were to go on the path of dharma, husband were to deviate from the path of dharma and go and perform adharmic actions, then it is the duty of the wife to teach him, bring sense to him, make him, convince him to come back to the path of dharma. So that is also kind of teaching, wherein the wife takes up the role of the guru. We know this, from the Itihasa Puranas, such as, teachers such as Madalasa and all, who were great Gyanis, right? So the point here is, the verse, even if you take Swatantra as independence, here, independence refers to leading a life disconnected from Dharma. Because Manusmriti is a Dharma Shastra, and its primary purpose is to give instruction about dharma. Manusmriti is not a Kama Shastra, it is not a Artha Shastra. It touches upon Artha and Kama. It has a bearing upon Artha and Kama, yes. But its primary purpose is to enunciate upon dharma. How does dharma has a bearing upon Artha and Kama? It has in this way. Consider this. Artha and Kama comes natural to all of us, because that is how the world is there. We all live in the world. We have our ambitions, our desires, we pursue it. And if you want to make money, you can either rob a bank, or you can work hard and join a bank and work hard and earn money, right? There are two ways. It is dharma which says that if you rob a bank, then it will lead to negative result. You may or may not get caught in this life itself. You may get caught also. But even if you don't get caught in this life, even then there will be papa karma. There is a papa, a karmic demerit generated, which will give you suffering in the future lives. This is what Dharma Shastra is teaching, to distinguish between actions which are beneficial to us and actions which are harmful to us. So in this context, what Manusmriti is saying that is that Nastri Swatantra Marati, the Swatantra here is being independent of Dharma or being disconnected from Dharma, focusing on only a life full of arthakama or sense gratification. She should not be left independent of that, in the sense that if anybody, if we completely disregard Dharma, what will happen? It will simply mean that eventually we are at the loss. We will go on a path which will lead to complete vinasha, complete suffering, complete destruction. We will cause destruction to ourselves, we will cause destruction to the world. We'll disturb the social harmony, will disturb the cosmic order. So we have a statement, vinasha kale vipirita buddhi. So when the time for the destruction comes, the buddhi becomes brashta. The buddhi becomes delusion. In Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna mentions about how the whole chain of adharma functions. So it is merely saying that women should not take recourse to adharma. That is what the Swatantra here means, if you have to interpret it purely in the sense of independence. It might also be interesting, and it is very, you should know that this holds true for men as well as for women. It is not that women alone are to follow Dharma and men are free from Dharma. No. But rather, 70% of the, or at least more than 50% of the teachings of Dharma Shastra are focused upon men, right? But it might also interesting for you to know that in the Sanskrit literature, there is a term called Swairini, which means independent women. But who is this Swairini? It is not a Swairini, is not a some CEO of a company. Swairini does not refer to somebody now who on her own built a company or doing a business or is empowered in Arthakama. No. As, a Swairini specifically refers to one who has out of sensual desire, out of coming under the influence of lust, she has discarded grihastha dharma. She has discarded her marriage and has gone and established a relationship with men outside of marriage. So she has basically discarded the very institution of marriage and leaving willfully by having a sexual relationship with anybody and everybody that she likes. Now, of course, in the contemporary feminist narratives or in the narratives in the context of sexual and reproductive health, we all listen to this, that how women should have freedom to choose her sexual partner. So that kind of choice is what is called a Swairini, and it is such independence also is what is being denied in Manu. Why is it being denied? Because it is saying that if you want to fulfill karma, even of the sexual kind, you can do it within the context of marriage, because that is the most safest way. And that is the proper way in which there is no papa generated. That is the proper way in which you will not be going into suffering. There could be a lot of psychological studies and cultural studies that show that this serialized polygamy that is practiced presently, or the serialized, one relationship after another, it could be men, it could be women, it doesn't matter. It comes with a lot of psychological cost. It comes with a lot of loss of meaning, internal vacuum, and depression, and so many other things. We all know these things happening around the world, right? So it is my submission that there is absolutely nothing demeaning to women in this verse 9.3. Neither is there any exploitation or oppression of women indicated here. Instead, the verse is strongly arguing in favor of women, her protection, and her well being. It is only the colonial gaze which is completely distorting this. In the beginning, I also mentioned briefly how in the fifth chapter also similar verse occurs. There, the independence has a particular meaning that women should not, uh, you know, should not disconnect herself to the dharmic method that has been indicated to her in the Dharma Shastra. So, Dharma Shastra purpose is to indicate what is the best method by which each and every person can attain Abhyudaya Nishresa. The very definition of Dharma is that which leads to Abhyudaya Nishresa. Abhyudaya means that which leads to material well-being in this loka, that which leads to sukha, happiness, swarga, heaven, and chitta shuddhi, purification of the mind. Whereas nishrayasa means moksha. So the purpose of Dharma Shastra or purpose of Dharma itself is to indicate such a path. And it says that every person has to adopt the means that are indicated for them so that they can attain the results that path can give. So you cannot say that I will sit for a medical exam, but I will go and join an engineering college, right? To join engineering college, you have to take engineering exam, something like, similar to this. Okay, I think um, we have to rush now because I've taken a lot of time. Coming to the heart of the issue, I want to highlight some of the problems with contemporary approach to Dharma text, contemporary approach which is rooted in colonial gaze, which is rooted in a Western gaze. Some of the problems. So, and I strongly believe that it is this the contemporary approach is actually preventing us from having a authentic engagement with texts such as Manusmriti. So one of the problem that I just highlighted in the examples I discussed is that framing the gender discourse as a man-woman conflict. So in the example, it is very obvious already that the contemporary scholarship posits different verses as anti-women in the context of man versus women framework. So that is the underlying framework, that wherein the two genders are being considered as always being in a state of competition, state of conflict with each other without any reconciliation. And this is at the heart of much of the feminist narratives that see men as oppressive and women as always being in a state of conflict and competition with them, men for resources. So this has resulted in branding of the text such as Manusmriti as misogynist. Second point is the contemporary approach, contemporary discourse reduces Dharma discourse, the notion of Dharma and the whole teaching of Dharma into some kind of class power, into the whole whose whole purpose is to establish, Brahmini, to take this Dharma Shastra text as a Brahminical tool for gaining political power by oppressing others. So they build entire discourse not just on basis of man-woman conflict, but also through this framework of oppressor and oppressed. So they always try to find some oppressor here and some oppressor there, and try to fit everything, every teaching into that model. So the ideological origins of this oppressor-oppressed model, this whole discourse is actually centered in Marxism. In the Marxian assumptions about, a conflict between opposite forces. Marxist view of history that see also social evolution, societal evolution is driven by class conflict. This idea is very, very deeply ingrained in modern scholarship. And when they study Dharma texts and when they try to explain Dharma teachings, they use derivative frameworks from this, such as gendered conflict, class conflict, Varna-based conflict, Brahmana versus Kshatriya, Dvija versus Shudra, and upper caste, lower caste. So this is as good about the text as it is about sociology, right? So in this narrative, every Hindu text, not just Manusmriti, but more specifically Manusmriti, but it is true about every Hindu text, even Bhagavad Gita is not free from such analysis, where it is reduced to oppressor-oppressed conflict narrative. And Manusmriti especially becomes a Brahminical tool for gaining political power. Even Mahabharata, Ramayana, I think it is Sheldon Pollock who characterizes Ramayana as a tool for political power. And in a negative sense, it is not even in a positive sense, right? Now, the another issue with these are all very connected issues. These are all problems with the frameworks of the discourse, and these are all very connected issues. The another is this problem of historical reductionism. So basically, the Hindu texts are reduced into artifacts of history. So this, you see Patrick Olivelle, you see all these modern scholars, they study these texts as artifacts of history. That is, oh, this text came first, this text came later. This text, this portion of this text was composed during Gupta period. Before that, the society was different. After that, this text created a more. For example, in the context of Manusmriti, they say, after the creation, composition of Manusmriti in Shunga texts, so Shunga dynasty. This is what the contemporary scholars say. I don't agree with it anyways. So what they say is, because of the composition of this text, post that time, the society became more rigid, more frozen, more oppressive, and all these uh, historicist narrative are brought in. With Manusmriti, Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata, Vedas, every other text is subjected to this historical reductionism, wherein they are reduced to historical and sociological artifacts and not as a living text with a philosophical, ethical, spiritual relevance. This is at the heart of the problem, wherein the much of the text becomes ridiculously reinterpreted. Their very soul of the text is crushed, and uh, the other, the soul itself is crushed. Their meaning, the contextual teaching, the philosophical underpinnings, how these texts are relevant to here and now. The very idea that these texts are teaching eternal uh, concepts such as dharma, moksha, all becomes sidelined. The other issue is universalizing Western categories. The modern readings impose Western categories like law, religion, superstition onto these texts, upon which they operate with a very different assumptions, such as dharma, papa, punya, ashrama, varna. I already gave example from a previous book on ashaucha, impurity. How this misapplication is very easy when you superimpose Western categories on Hindu categories. A lot of distortions and misunderstandings happen because of this. And then discrediting the contemporary scholarship, the academic scholarship, completely sideline, completely don't give importance to indigenous epistemology, the indigenous hermeneutics, the Shastriya method of approaching the text. They completely, disregard it. In the Hindu epistemology, we don't only cater to the pratyaksha or anumana pramana, the direct perception, the empirical knowledge, and the logical inference. We think in the terms of 6 pramanas, 6 valid sources of knowledge, of which the Shabda Pramana or the Shastriya, the scriptural testimony, or the Shastra Pramana is also considered as a independent source of authentic knowledge. However, all these are dismissed as unscientific, irrational, etc. by materialistic paradigms. Because the materialistic paradigm that is current today, even in humanities, basically they all base themselves on positivism, logistic positivism, or scientism, which take only the scientific method or the empirical method as the only test of knowledge, as the only idea or the only method through which knowledge can be gained, right? So this is a problem, because we are speaking in
Nitinji,
when
we have
yeah,
done like 1 hour. We can wrap up in the next 5-10 minutes.
yeah. Oh, I'll quickly wrap it up in 5-10 minutes. Yeah. So basically, these are the issues. that wherein the metaphysical foundations such as dharma, punya, papa, which are invisible, which are adrishta, all become sidelined and branded as superstition, and instead the Manusmriti and other texts becomes political manifesto or ancient artifacts containing historical information and such things. So we have many more problems. So unfortunately, we don't have time. Basically, the multi-dimensional nature of Manusmriti is reduced into polemical text advocating casteism, misogyny, and branded as outdated, superstitious, and harmful, so on and so forth in the contemporary discourse. Basically, it's the contemporary approach, the colonial gaze, strips a text of its philosophical, ethical, and spiritual dimensions and completely distorts the meaning of dharma and the purpose of dharma text, thereby making any meaningful engagement with Manu and other dharma shastras almost impossible. So if we have to revive the Hindu Dharmic Drishti today, it is vital that Dharma Shastra texts such as Manusmriti are not abandoned, but rather recovered, and it's studied in a Shastriya format using Shastriya hermeneutics and pedagogy must be revived. Because I mentioned this earlier also, that there can be no understanding of Dharma without Dharma Shastra. For Dharma is a Shastra revealed principle. So it is the Vedas, Itihasa, Puranas, it is the Smriti Shastras which teaches what Dharma is. We cannot make up this definition based on our own fancy and imagination. So if we discard the Smriti Shastras, then we cannot have an authentic knowledge, authentic discussion on what Dharma is. So I just want to briefly share about my book before I conclude. So with all these intentions in the back of my mind, considerations in the back of my mind, I wrote this book, Chatuh Shloki Manusmriti, as a beginning towards this end, that is, not to remove the colonial gaze and provide a gateway to enter the world of Dharma Shastra in a meaningful manner. So what my book offers, I think there was a, anyways, okay. Okay, so we don't have time for, okay, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, I mistakenly stopped my sharing. Let me quickly share again. Yeah, so what is beyond this is to move beyond the colonial gaze implies that we have to understand Dharma is both eternal and contextual. It is eternal in essence, contextual in application, and study of the Dharma Shastra has to be dehistoricized and shift to a philosophical study. And we have to understand Dharma Shastra's core of the Bharatiya Jnana Parampara, not an artifact of the past, but the living body of teachings. And we have to understand the definition, purpose, and end goals of the Dharma. And with that in mind, we have to inquire into Dharma texts. And we have to understand Dharma as a means to attain Abhyudaya, Nishrayasa. So all these ideas, and that Dharma Shastra is also primarily a Pramana Shastra, which imparts knowledge about Dharma, and it is not what the contemporary characterization shows, right? As a hegemonic tool and etc. So this is what I have tried to do in my book. The book explores fundamental questions such as what is Dharma, what is the purpose and definition of Dharma, what is the end result, why Dharma should be practiced, how it should be, how it is helpful, what is the end result of Dharma, what are the authentic sources from which Dharma can be known, who is eligible to study Dharma, who is eligible to teach Dharma, who is eligible to practice Dharma, what is Dharma Shastra, why study Dharma Shastra, what is its relevance in the contemporary world, what is the, see, Varna, caste, Varna, the Shastriya term is Varna, we often translate it as caste. So what is this Varna? There is a lot of confusion. There is an appendix chapter which goes deep into this. What is the deeper meaning of Varna? Is it a reference to profession, psychological category, or something else? Does it has a ritual basis? So all these are explored in my book. The book is not, though it is a study of the first 4 verses, I draw upon wide range of sources from Veda Samhitas, Brahmanas, Upanishads, Smritis, Gita, Itihasa, Puranas, and cite lot of acharyas starting from Adi Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Swami Vidyaranya, Kumarila Bhatta, Aurobindo, and many more. So the goal of the project which I tried to do in my book is to restore Manusmriti to its rightful place, not as a relic, but as a living source of Dharma and a gateway to authentically engage with it. I hope many of you will read the book, share it with your circle, comment on the book. I am very thankful for this invitation. And I also invite you all to rediscover our Dharma Shastra tradition, our Dharma tradition in a intellectual and spiritual way through engagement with my book, through study, reflection, and discussion on this book. Do share a word. Thank you very much. The book is published by Vitasta Publication and in New Delhi. It is currently available in Amazon India and Padega India and other major bookstores in India. I'm told by my publisher that it will soon be available on Amazon.com and .co.uk in a month or so. But it is available in India, and you can procure from India if you have a relative or somebody, or directly from a publisher. If some some of you want a large number of copies, they can connect directly to my publisher. They can sending a bulk copy is more easier than sending single copy outside of India, and they could perhaps give some discount also. So thank you for taking time. Sorry for taking more time than.
No worries. Thank you very much, Nitinji. That was very insightful, especially with Manusmriti, which is so misunderstood for so many years. There are a lot of questions in the message, but before that, I have one question. Can you recommend a good translation of Manusmriti in Hindi, Marathi, Kannada?
Marathi, I don't know. Hindi, there is a good translation by Acharya Kaundinyayana, Shivaraja Acharya Kaundinyayana. It is published by Chaukamba Pratishtana. Chaukamba is Sanskrit
Banaras.
Pratishtana. Yes,
Yeah.
Varanasi. Varanasi, they have published many Sanskrit Hindi translations by different scholars. All of them would be good. But I particularly refer to this. It is this book. I don't know whether you can see this or not. So this is by Shivaraj Acharya Kaundinyayana, a Nepali scholar, Vidwan. And in English, if you want, there is a complete translation by Ganganath Jha. It is available online. He has translated both Manusmriti and its commentary by Medhatiti. And of course, my own book deals with in very in-depth detail of the whole first 4 verses of the Manusmriti.
Right, yeah. So we have some questions. I will read it from the message. So one is, does Manusmriti provide any guidance on seeking suitable life partner or spouse?
It does have a lot of guidance on that, definitely. And I would like to say that we should see this not just as a Manusmriti, but as a Shastra Parampara. Sometimes many information are spread across different texts. But Manusmriti definitely does have many ideas regarding husband-wife relationship. It is that at the heart of the marriage is fidelity between husband and wife. And and fidelity arises from mutual love, right? So mutual love and compatibility. So that is one idea, that when you have to choose a partner, choose a compatible partner, and choose a partner with whom you can get along, with whom you can share. The Hindu idea of marriage is sahakama sahadharma. So dharma, artha, kama, moksha, you have to do together. So that is the Hindu idea of marriage, prevalent across the text.
There's another question which says, can you provide one page or quote to counterattack on our dharma, defaming Hindutva?
I am not sure what exactly do you mean by.
Yeah, it's not very clear, the question, because I think the entire book is attacking all the defamation, right?
The book has definitely criticism of certain popular academic positions, and I have definitely clarified many of the aspects such as what Varna is, etc. in the book. So please do read my book, and you can, quote excerpts from it if anything is found useful for your purpose.
Amit ji, please ask your question.
Yeah, thank you, Samirji. Nitin ji, I want to touch base to your previous reference to the Manu text, Manusmriti being, added or modified in the Shunga period. So my question is, the text that is available today in original, has it always been the same, or as you mentioned that it was like say the Western colonialist said that it could have been added because of the unfavorable text that went in, and that could have been added in the Shunga period. So that is the question. I mean, obviously, because somebody who doesn't, as you today clarified the point here, but the dichotomy of having verse which praises women as against something like something the 9.3, the verse which 9.3 which today is clarified, but to a normal reader who doesn't understand might seem derogatory. So was there always a singular text throughout history, throughout our ages, or was it modified? Thank you.
See, I think, there is the first chapter in the book discusses this. The title of the chapter is, the origination and transmission of and authorship of Manusmriti. So there, this whole discussion is given. But I want to provide a brief answer. See, the very question primarily comes from a Western framework of the issue, right? So the Western understanding is that the Manusmriti was composed itself in Shunga period. So they say it is not an ancient text; it is merely composed between somewhere between the 3rd century BC to 3rd century CE. So somewhere there it was composed, and they say that these texts are all the popular Arya Samaj view is also that they have been interpolated. So the Arya Samaj has brought out a edition called Vishuddha Manusmriti, where they say half of the Manusmriti is interpolated. But the point is, all these assertions of interpolation, in academic terms, they are called as higher criticism. But what they are actually is basically a speculation. So you don't like something, it is not according to your expectation of a text or your ideological orientation, you can simply brand it as interpolation, right? So logic is a two-edged sword. You can argue this way or that way. I would not. So this, in my understanding, they are all mostly speculations. They are not. They often distort, prevent us from having a proper understanding of the text. Now, Patrick Olivella has also, despite his views on many problematic views, he also brought out a critical edition of Manusmriti, where the critical edition is more or less, there might be some minor variations here and there, because that is how the recension, there is a long recension for 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years. So obviously there will be many different recensions, some variations of that. But as far as manuscript evidence are concerned, whatever extant text is there, it is an authentic version, right? And we have had Sanskrit commentaries on this text going back to 1,200, 1,300 years. And there were earlier commentaries earlier than that, but we don't have access to it now. Third, no Indian text can be spoken of as a single text. Rather, we have to speak as a Shastra Parampara. And this is a point highlighted by Dr. Bharat Gupta in his foreword to the book. And this is a point which we know from Manusmriti itself, or even from other evidences that I have dealt with in my first chapter in the introductory section, wherein the knowledge is traced back to Swayambhava Manu, who learned from Brahma, and then he taught it to his Shishyas, Bhrigu and other rishis. From there, we know from Narada Smriti, we know from Mahabharata that there were several lines of recension wherein this knowledge was carried out. The original composition of Manu, as per Narada Smriti, contained 100,000 chapters or 100,000 verses or chapters. That was successively redacted into smaller summarized versions. The final reduction as per Narada Smriti contains 4,000 verses, which was done by somebody called Sumati Bhargava. That is a person whose name is Sumati, who comes in the Brigu line, hence Bhargava, Brigu line of transmission. And even that contained 4,000 verses. But the current text we have has 2,600 something verses. So this explains either the current text is the Sumati Bhargava's version from which some 1,000 verses are lost, or this is a redaction which comes later than Sumati Bhargava's version. So this is quite possible. So what this modern scholars who speak about the current text being authored, the extant text being authored between 3rd century BCE to 3rd century CE, could be well true as far as this extant text is concerned. But the Shastra Parampara itself is very, very old. It is as old as the world itself. If you take the Shastra view that Swayambhava Manu is the son of Brahma himself. But even if you ignore that view, even then it shows that the text as the Shastra Parampara is very, very old. So much old that even in the Veda, there is a verse that whatever Manu says is like a medicine, that you may not like it in the first instance, but it is what you require. It is what is beneficial to you. This is a statement found in the Veda itself. So you can understand that Manu's teachings is very, very old. And Manu is at the heart of all Dharma Shastra tradition. In many sense, all the different Smritis, all the later Dharma Shastra tradition are an expansion of what Manusmriti has taught. The more detailed response to this is given in my book in the first chapter. I request you to study it and reflect upon it. I hope this was useful.
We have a question from Sthanu Murthy ji. I will enable the unmute them. Okay, Sthanu Murthy ji, please go ahead.
Hari Om and pranams to all. Namaste. Dhanyavadaha for this very enlightening session. I just want to bring one element of timelines because it is being mentioned. One of the things that many scholars tend to ignore is that we are in a continuous cycle. So when we do our normal sankalpa, we do Mamopata Samasta Dhurti Shadwara, and then we say Adya Brahmanaha Dvitiya Parade. This is the second half of Brahma. Shvetavaraha Kalpe. This Kalpa is known as Shvetavaraha. Vaivaswada Manvantare. This Manu currently is Vaivaswada Manu. So the point why I'm just trying to bring this element of timeline into consideration is to emphasize on the fact that what the Western so-called knowledge scholars or researchers try to talk about is in a very linear manner. They do not understand the cyclical time frame or framework of how Sanatana Dharma operates, as a result of which they are and because their Semitic religions operate in a very linear manner from one birth to death and then afterlife, without going into the concept of Punarjanma, which is very essential and elementary to Sanatana Dharma, they fail to recognize the timeline. The other thing which I just want to highlight, I'm sure our current speaker for the day, Nithin Sridhar ji, knows this, is maybe knowing and should have highlighted, maybe I would have missed it, is the fact that when we talk about timelines, we are not necessarily referring to the current the Chatur Yugas. It could have happened in the previous Chatur Yuga also, or many of the Chatur Yugas that could have formed part of this Kalpa or the previous Kalpa also. As a result of which, because when something comes from the Vedas...
Okay, Sthanu Murthy ji, please let Nithin ji reply to your question. Yeah.
Well, actually, there is no question. I agree with him. I mentioned in my presentation that there is a need to dehistoricize our engagement with the text. So it is the result of historicization of the engagement that has caused all these meaningless pursuits into trying to fit everything into a particular timeline. Otherwise, as Sthanuji highlighted, in our Sankalpa, we say we are in a Vaivaswata Manu. But who is the Manu who is attributed, is called as the originator of Dharma teachings. It is Swayambhava Manu who is the first Manu. So Swayavasvata is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, sixth Manu. So you just imagine how far back this Dharma teaching goes, right? And this is a cyclical. So this is correct. And in a slide that unfortunately I could not take up because of lack of time, I mentioned this point. I will just add it here because I got a chance. We have to, when we study Dharmashastra texts, we have to have an understanding, we have to anchor ourselves in the Dharmashastra frameworks, such as the Yuga cycle, Varnashrama Dharma, Apad Anapad conditions, punishment versus expiation, that is Danda versus Prayashchitta, Achara, Vyavahara, Prayashchitta, all these notions, Vidhi, Nisheda, Arthavada, Vakya Veda. So all these frameworks, all these ideas, we have to familiarize ourselves, and we have to keep that in the back of the mind when we are studying the text. Only then this text true understanding can dawn upon us. The text will open up like a, the text, the Shastra is very unlike a fiction. The Shastra is a guru in itself. So when you approach it in the right manner, with the right attitude and of Shraddha and the right tools, then it opens up layers upon layers of meaning. And so this is what I truly mean by, adopting Dharmic hermeneutics, adopting Hindu epistemology and ontology, and using Dharmic Dharma Shastra frameworks and approaching with Shraddha, etc.
So thank you, Nitinji, and thank you, the audience, for coming to our show. And we look forward for everyone to attend our next session. And Dhanyavad, Nitinji. Pranam. Yeah.
I look forward to hearing your thoughts on the book as well as on the on the talk. Do share your feedback and do drop in a comment on Amazon, etc. whenever you read the book on Goodreads, etc. Thank you very much for
Definitely.
this opportunity.